I used to think anniversaries were checkpoints, moments to pause, look back, and appreciate the journey. Our 8th anniversary should have felt like that. But sitting alone in my car, outside the radio station that night, clutching a bouquet of half-wilted lilies, all I felt was static. The kind that buzzes in your chest when something's gone terribly wrong, but you can't quite name it yet. Rebecca had always been vibrant. The kind of woman whose laugh turned heads and whose opinion stirred conversation. I used to love that about her, the way she lit up a room just by walking in. We met at a university mixer, both of us tired of pretending we weren't lonely. I was studying electrical engineering. She was majoring in communications with a dream of hosting her own talk show someday. I remember thinking she'd outgrow me before we even got started. But she didn't. At least, not for a while. We married young, her idea. Said she didn't want to waste any more time waiting for the right moment. And honestly, neither did I. We built a modest life in a quiet corner of the city. I found work in infrastructure tech, while she climbed her way through the media world. For the first few years, our lives moved in rhythm. Sunday morning coffee, Friday movie nights. Unspoken routines that became the glue holding us together. But rhythms change. Lately, it felt like we were on different frequencies. It started subtly. Her phone never left her side anymore. She used to read in bed. Now she'd lie next to me, screen aglow, chuckling at messages she never explained. Her hours stretched longer. She blamed it on the new radio segment she was developing. Late Light with Bex. A live, late-night talk show that aired 3 nights a week on local FM. I wanted to be proud. I was, in theory. But she never invited me to the studio, never shared her scripts. I'd listen sometimes, hearing her voice smooth and playful over the airwaves, answering callers with flirtatious banter. It never sat right. The lilies wilted further as I sat in my car, listening to the tail end of her latest episode. Her co-host, Dane Mitchell, was a former shock jock trying to rebrand. Too charming for his own good, with the kind of voice that could melt an apology into a compliment. I always thought he was a little too interested in Rebecca. Always, accidentally, touching her back in photos. Always calling her Bex, like they had some private joke. She told me not to worry. "He's harmless," she'd said, brushing me off with that smile that meant I was being silly. But I wasn't smiling now. The broadcast turned quiet for a beat, then I heard it, the soft giggle I knew too well. Her giggle. Then Dane's voice. "Bex, are we really going to do this on air?" Rebecca laughed again, breathy, nervous. "You started it. Don't chicken out now." I turned the volume up, heart pounding. "You know we have a live mic, right?" he said. "Then I guess we better make it quick," she whispered, followed by what sounded unmistakably like a kiss. A long, audible one. Then silence. Static. My stomach flipped. I fumbled for the door handle, but couldn't move. It felt like my entire world narrowed to the dashboard and her voice in my ear, softer now, saying something about how it had been a long time coming. She said she didn't regret it. I shut off the radio. The studio's windows were lit. From my angle, I could see them moving inside, her silhouette against the blinds, laughing, dancing maybe. And Dane, close behind, hands on her waist like he'd been there 100 times before. I didn't go in. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want confirmation. Maybe I needed time to process the sound of my marriage snapping in half. That night, I slept in the guest room. She came home after midnight, reeking of perfume and adrenaline. I pretended to be asleep, but she didn't bother to check. I listened to her shower, humming one of her radio jingles like nothing had changed. But everything had. The next morning, I didn't need coffee to feel awake. Rage and disbelief were better stimulants. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched toast, as Rebecca breezed in like she hadn't just made out with her co-host live on air the night before. She kissed the top of my head casually, like routine still existed, and poured herself a glass of orange juice. "You're up early," she said, her voice light. "Everything okay?" It was hard to respond to someone so unshaken, so oblivious, or maybe just a better actor than I'd ever given her credit for. "Listened to your show last night," I said carefully. She paused mid-sip. I watched the color drain from her face. "Seemed like you had a good time." Her eyes darted toward the window. "Oh." That was all she said. Just "oh." "Want to tell me what that was?" I asked, finally letting the bitterness in my voice leak out. "Do you really want the answer to that?" she asked softly. "I deserve it." She sat down, folding her arms, the way she did when she was about to deliver news she didn't want interrupted. "Dane and I, it's been happening for a few months now. After the late shows, sometimes. He gets me in ways you haven't lately. And the live mic? That wasn't planned. We didn't know it was hot." I blinked slowly, biting back the urge to flip the table. "So it was an accident? The audio?" She nodded, looking embarrassed. "It was supposed to be off. We didn't know. That's supposed to make me feel better? No. I know it doesn't. But now you know, and I guess maybe that's for the best." I felt like I was sitting in someone else's life. My wife, the woman I built a life with, had just calmly confessed to sleeping with someone else, on and off the air, and now she was looking at me like she expected me to shrug and move on. "I've been working late," I said, not because it was an excuse, but because it was true. "Trying to make partner, trying to give us a future." "I know," she whispered, eyes misting over. "But somewhere in the middle of that, I stopped being your priority. The show became this escape. Dane listens. He makes me feel like I still matter." I stood. "You mattered. You mattered every time I stayed up waiting for you, every time I listened to that damn show trying to feel connected to you. But you chose a microphone and a man who likes hearing himself talk more than he likes hearing you." She didn't stop me when I walked out the door. Over the next few days, everything unraveled. The clip from the live show made the rounds on social media, first as a funny "oops," then as gossip. The station issued a vague statement about disciplinary reviews and technical mishaps. But by then, the damage was viral. People online speculated, debated, and dissected the kiss like it was a teaser for the next season of a soap opera. I went silent. I didn't respond to texts. I ignored the calls from friends who had clearly heard. I lived in a daze, waiting for the floor to finally collapse under me. A week after the broadcast, she packed a bag and moved in with her sister. No dramatic goodbye. No begging me to fix it. Just a quiet admission that she didn't know what she wanted anymore. She left her wedding ring on the windowsill. I remember staring at that ring for hours one night, wondering if it had ever meant what I thought it did. The vows, the plans, the promises whispered between kisses, it all felt counterfeit in hindsight. But the worst part? I missed her. Even after everything, I still caught myself making 2 cups of coffee in the morning. I still paused when a song from her show came on. I still hoped she'd call and tell me it was all a massive mistake. But she didn't. A month passed. The house stayed too quiet. I started talking to a therapist, mostly because I didn't want my hurt to calcify into hatred. She asked me if I still loved Rebecca. I didn't answer her. Not because I didn't know, but because I wasn't sure what love looked like anymore. One night, I got a message from an unfamiliar number. Just a link. I clicked it. It was a new episode of her show, rebranded No Dane. Just her solo. A monologue. "I've made a lot of mistakes, she said, voice low and raw. And some of them were heard by the world. But the biggest one wasn't about microphones or mistakes. It was forgetting the man I married. I shut it off before she finished. I wasn't ready to hear her version. Not yet. But something in me stirred. Something between anger and memory. Like maybe part of me still needed to know where this story would end. It was a gray Saturday when I saw her again. Nearly 2 months had passed since the honor betrayal, and life had settled into a kind of cold normalcy. My mornings were quiet. I no longer flinched when I walked by our bedroom. The silence was still deafening, but it had lost its sting. That was, until she knocked on my door. I hadn't heard her car pull up. I hadn't been expecting her, Rebecca, standing on my porch with a black umbrella and a familiar look in her eyes. Nervous, unreadable. "I just need 5 minutes," she said. I let her in, because I still hadn't figured out how to say no to her. We sat in the living room, across from each other, surrounded by the quiet ghosts of our former life. "I don't know what I'm expecting," she said, twisting her hands in her lap. "I just couldn't leave it like this." I waited. "I've ended things with Dane," she said. I didn't respond. She wasn't fishing for a reaction. She just needed to say it aloud. "It wasn't real," she went on. "What we had, it was adrenaline, attention, someone telling me I was extraordinary when I felt invisible. But it burned fast. Too fast. And once it was over, there was nothing left but smoke and guilt. You didn't need to cheat to tell me you were unhappy," I said, still calm, still guarded. "You could have just talked to me." "I tried," she said, voice cracking. "But you were always somewhere else. You used to ask about my day. You used to listen. I was trying to build a life for us. I thought we were partners." "I know. I think I got lost in needing to be seen. And Dane, he was looking. That show, it gave me attention I hadn't felt in years." I sighed, looking at her, not with anger, but with weariness. "Do you love him?" "No," she said quickly. "I think I loved how he made me feel. That's not the same." We sat there in silence for a moment, the kind that carries the weight of every unspoken word. Outside, rain tapped against the windows, soft and steady. "I miss us," she whispered. "I miss you." I leaned back, folding my arms. "What do you want from me, Rebecca?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I want you to come on the show. One night. As my guest." I blinked. "What?" "Not for ratings. Not for drama. Just closure. To talk. Honestly. One last time." At first, I was insulted. But the more I thought about it, the more it made a strange kind of sense. Our story had exploded through that microphone. Maybe it was fitting for it to end there, too. 3 nights later, I walked into the studio where she'd kissed another man. The air smelled of coffee and recycled air. Her producer nodded at me without a word. Dane's nameplate was gone. The set was simple, intimate. A couch, 2 mics, dim lighting. Rebecca sat across from me, headphones on, looking like herself again. Not Bex, the radio persona. Just her. The red light came on. "Good evening, listeners," she began, her voice steady but softer than usual. "Tonight's show is a little different. I'm joined by someone I've loved and hurt, someone who deserves more than a private apology." She looked at me, and I nodded slightly. We talked about how we met, our early days, the joy, the disconnection, the betrayal. She asked questions, and I answered honestly. So did she. And then I said it, live, with the mic capturing every word. "I'm not here to shame you, Rebecca, or to say I was perfect. But you didn't just hurt me. You broke something sacred. You broke us. And I don't think I can come back from that. She swallowed hard, but she didn't cry. I understand. You're not a villain, I added. But you're not the woman I married either. Maybe we both changed. And maybe this is just the end of something that was only ever meant to last until this point. Silence. Then she said, if there's one thing I want our listeners to take away from this, it's that sometimes, even when love is real, it can still die from neglect. And lies. And ego. I stood up before the segment ended. Removed the headphones. She watched me walk out of the studio, and I didn't look back. A week later, the divorce papers were signed. Clean. No drawn-out fight. No scavenging over assets. Just signatures, and a quiet acknowledgement that it was time to let go. I kept the house. She moved to a downtown apartment close to the station, which she still worked at, though now she called her show Signal and Noise. I listened once just to see. She talked about life, choices, regrets. She never mentioned me. Months passed. I started running again, cooking, laughing. And one day, I turned on the radio, not to hear her, but just for the background noise. For the first time in a long while, the static didn't hurt. It just reminded me that even after the loudest feedback, silence can still bring peace.